Welcome back to This Day in Irish History. I'm your host, Raymond Welsh. Before we dive into today's story, if you'd like to explore other significant events that happened on this day in Irish history, visit thisdayirishhistory.com. The link is in the episode description. Now, let's journey back to April 28th, 1916, during the height of the Easter Rising, when British soldiers carried out the North King Street Massacre, a tragic and brutal episode that shocked Ireland and deepened public resentment against British rule. The Easter Rising, launched on Easter Monday, April the 24th, 1916, had plunged Dublin into chaos. Rebel forces, led by groups such as the Irish Volunteers and the Irish Citizen Army, seized key locations across the city, declaring an Irish Republic. British military forces responded with overwhelming force, deploying thousands of soldiers to suppress the uprising. Street fighting was intense, particularly in areas like the North King Street neighbourhood, which was strategically located near the Four Courts, one of the rebels' main strongholds. By April 28th, the British military campaign in Dublin had turned increasingly ruthless. The army, frustrated by the rebels' fierce resistance and their own mounting casualties, grew suspicious that local civilians were aiding the insurgents. In North King Street, soldiers from the South Staffordshire Regiment, under orders to clear the area, began forcibly entering homes and buildings, searching for hidden rebels. What followed was a grim and horrifying sequence of events. Over the course of the night of April 28th to 29th, British soldiers captured, summarily executed, and concealed the bodies of 15 unarmed civilians. These civilians, ordinary men, many of them labourers, shopkeepers, and workers, were suspected, often with little or no evidence, of being sympathetic to the rebels. In some cases, the victims were taken into the basements of their own homes or nearby buildings and shot at close range. Others were bayoneted or beaten to death. No formal charges were laid, and no trials were held. In the chaos of the rising suppression, due process was abandoned entirely. The massacre on North King Street was not a spontaneous act of rage by undisciplined soldiers. Rather, evidence later suggested that officers had encouraged a policy of taking no prisoners in these contested zones. In the immediate aftermath, the military sought to cover up the killings, hastily burying the bodies in cellars and behind walls. However, once the fighting ceased and the rising was brutally suppressed, the truth began to emerge. Families and neighbours reported the disappearance of their loved ones. Journalists, clergy, and local officials brought attention to the atrocity. A military inquiry was held, but its findings, predictably, sought to justify the soldiers' actions as regrettable but necessary under the circumstances of urban warfare. The impact of the North King Street massacre was profound. Although the Easter Rising itself had limited popular support at the outset, the brutal British response, including indiscriminate killings of civilians, executions of rebel leaders, and the imposition of martial law, radically shifted Irish public opinion. Anger and resentment toward British rule deepened, fueling the nationalist movement that would eventually lead to the Irish War of Independence just a few years later. The men murdered on North King Street became symbols of British injustice and the high cost of Ireland's fight for freedom. Their deaths are remembered today as a stark reminder of the human toll of occupation and resistance, and of the ways in which heavy-handed repression can backfire, hardening opposition rather than extinguishing it. And then, thank you for joining me on this journey through Ireland's rich past. Please like and subscribe, and until next time, I'm Raymond Welsh. Slán go Foil.